Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Charlotte County. I'm Dan Lambert, and I serve this congregation as minister. Our progressive, welcoming, inclusive, and judgment-free congregation is a liberal religious community of diverse and free-thinking individuals. UUFCC is a spiritual community where reason and social justice matter. As people who learn, love, share, and serve together, we welcome all into our family. We begin our service each and every week by singing an invitation to gather together, even as we are scattered in many different places with this technology. So I invite you to sing together while you keep yourself muted, enter, rejoice, and zoom in, and remember to clap and use the jazz hands. Our worship associate today is Laura Anderson, and she has words for us as we prepare to light the chalice.
Good morning. Maybe you don't make mistakes like I do, but if you aren't perfect and you would like to, please join me in this chalice lighting. It's a responsive reading. I will read a line and then you respond with, "We light this chalice." These words are by the Reverend Maureen Killoran and titled, "For Every Time We Make a Mistake." For every time we make a mistake and decide to start again. For every time we are lonely and we let someone be our friend. For every time we are disappointed and we choose to hope. May it be so.
May it be so. Thank you, Laura. And now I invite you to join with me as we say our affirmation as I light the chalice. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service is its law. This is our aspiration, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth and love, and to help one another. I'll give you now a moment to light your own chalice at home if you'd like to. And we'll go back to Laura for our opening words.
The opening and closing words this morning are both by Ijoma Oluo, author of So You Want to Talk About Race? This is the book club book for February for UUFCC. So if you've already read it and want to talk about it, you'll have the chance to do that. If you haven't read it, you have a few more weeks before the book group meets. Very few people actually know what privilege is. Privilege is an advantage or set of advantages that you have that others do not. A privilege has to come with someone else's disadvantage. Otherwise, it's not a privilege. Sit down and think about the advantages you've had in life. Did you grow up middle class? Are you white? Are you male? Are you non-disabled? Are you neurotypical? Are you a documented citizen of the country you live in? Did you grow up in a stable home environment? Do you have stable housing? Do you have reliable transportation? Are you cisgender? Are you straight? Are you thin, tall, or conventionally attractive? Get used to that uncomfortable feeling that arises when you discover that perhaps your privilege is hindering your ability to truly understand or address an issue. Get used to that pang of guilt that comes with realizing yet another area of life where you've benefited at the expense of others. It will not kill you. You can withstand it. You want to be more comfortable with this so that when you are confronted with your privilege in a stressful situation, like a Facebook argument, you will be able to limit your defensiveness enough to listen and learn.
Thank you so much for those words, Alora. They're perfect leading into our service today. Well, again, welcome. We're so glad to have you here. Today is Sunday, January 31st. It's the fifth Sunday of the month, and we all know what that means, the very special traditions we have here at UUFCC on the fifth Sunday. Okay, actually, we have none, especially during this time when we're on Zoom. We're just glad that we're here together. I'd love to have special things to do. However, if you want something to celebrate, today is my cousin Carrie's birthday. So happy birthday to my cousin Carrie. I am also wondering, though, because we're getting more and more news about the availability of the COVID vaccine, if you've been able to get your COVID vaccine, even just the first dose, or if you have a time scheduled in the coming days, if you could just in the chat room, just put me, we're just curious about how that's coming for our congregation. So if you've already had at least one or you have a schedule to get your first dose this coming week, just put me in the chat room, just out of curiosity. Go ahead and do that now if you'd like to. Also, if you're new with us and you're visiting, we are especially glad to have you with us here on Zoom or YouTube Live. If you happen to be with us on Zoom, we invite you to introduce yourself in our chat box and just give your name and where you are and maybe why you decided to join us today. That would be fantastic. Usually, if we're here in the sanctuary together, we would ask you to stand and say hello, and we'd all wave at you and shake hands and share a hug and a big welcome. And now we just do those things virtually. But the chat room is one tool that we can have to say hello to you wherever you are. So we'd love to know who you are so that we can welcome you with us during this Zoom service. At this time, as we move into our song for the morning, we're going to share and sing together Lift Every Voice and Sing, which is now becoming widely known as the Black National Anthem in many ways. This particular version, and there are many, many versions out there that have been recorded, and I know that our choir is also working on recording that, which is fantastic. This particular version is by Alicia Keys. She sings the song. There's a narration part by Anthony Mackie, and it comes to us from the National Football League back in September. There was a time, of course, in 2020 when there were lots of demonstrations and racial unrest and Black Lives Matter demonstrations and protests going on. And the NFL players made the NFL owners and management honor all of these protests. Alicia Keys' performance of this song was one way that they did this back in September. So I invite you to enjoy and sing along if you know the words and you'd like to. Lift every voice and sing.
We go to Arrowhead now for Lift Every Voice and Sing as it's played in the stadium.
At the dawn of the 20th century, America was a country full of promise and hope for many. Black Americans faced a different reality, a nation separate and unequal. Yet their hope persisted. Pained by inequality, but inspired by resilience, writer and civil rights activist James Weldon Johnson put pen to paper. His words would become a unifying call, a hope for a brighter tomorrow, a timeless exhortation to lift every voice and sing.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmony of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing a rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Let us march on till victory is won. Let us march on to victory.
There are forces that want to take us back to another place. We don't want to go back. We want to go forward.
Certainly an incredibly poignant song, and I could listen to Alicia Keys sing just about anything, I think. As we move into our member spotlight, this is also another really special opportunity for us. Let's go ahead and highlight Ted, who has a guest with him. This is Peg Stunkard. Hey, Peg. Ted, do we have volume? There
Okay.
we go.
There
Now we
are.
have volume. Hi, Peg. It's great to see you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to see all of you too.
Oh, how wonderful. You know, for the past several months, we've been doing a member spotlight as part of our service. And today, you are our very special member spotlight. Would you mind taking just a few minutes and telling us a little bit about your life's history, your education, your professions, the different things you've done in your life?
Many
Where
years in a couple minutes.
Yeah, sure. Why not? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Brazil, Indiana.
Oh,
And,
it's always great to have another Hoosier around. Love me some Hoosiers.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm a Hoosier, and I left there after I went to college at Indiana State Teachers College, and became a teacher because that's the place that I got a scholarship to. So I was able to have all 4 years and become a teacher. And I taught Indianapolis schools, as a substitute teacher for one session, one semester. And that was just before I went over to overseas into Guam during the end of the last war. And that not the last war, the World War II. And I was in Red Cross Recreation. I was not in the military. I didn't want to be in the military, but when I was 23, I was able to sign up for the Red Cross. And I enjoyed that year. I learned a lot. It was a wonderful experience. And I came back, and that's where I met my husband. And I married Bob Stunkard, and I had 4 children. He established a practice in Kokomo, Indiana. So that's where I came from to move down here to Florida. And people ask me, why do you live so long? And I have 3 answers generally. One is I taught nutrition because I was a home ec teacher, so that I could teach nutrition to children, to girls especially. And then the second thing, besides good nutrition, is exercise. I've been in an exercise class more or less since I was 50. So I've had almost 50 years of exercise, and that made a tremendous difference. I advocate that for everybody. But the third thing is the most important of all. So I want to get to that. And that is your attitude toward life. And it was about 8 or 10 years ago that I was very angry at someone, and I couldn't get it out of my system. And so I finally said, I'll just give it to Spirit. I'll give it to Spirit. You can take all the anger and the rancor that I'm going through with this, and just keep it. Do something with it. Get rid of it. And I got this message: take no offense. That's what came. Take no offense. In all those 8 or 10 years, or however long ago it was, I have taken no offense that I can recall. Now, maybe I don't like to recall the times that I took offense, but I don't think I have. And when someone asks me what kind of a day I'm having, how are you doing today? I said, well, I have a choice. I want them to know that we all have a choice, the kind of a day we're going to have. And if you choose to have a good day, you're starting off right. And anything that happens to you, if you can just give it to Spirit or whatever there is out there, but try. My bow and arrow against any offense is, the bow is love and the arrow is gratitude. And one is just as important as the other. But I decided I was going to unconditionally love, not just love. I'm going to unconditionally love all. And I'll admit, this last 4 years, I've had some moments when it wasn't exactly unconditional love that I was sending out. But that's my intent. And that's what I try very much to do. And I tell people, if you keep an attitude, a positive attitude, you're going to keep stress from ruining your body. And I have a thorough, very strong belief in that we create stress by the negatives that we think and that we bring into our lives and that we give to other people. And so my big thing is trying to unconditionally love. And you can say that's very naive, Peg. Well, I say then, well, it works for me.
That's one of the best sermons I've heard in a really, really, really long time. Wow.
You'll hear it in every talk I've ever given.
Well, if you were one of the young kids today, I would have you take a microphone and drop it, because that's called a mic drop, what you just said right there. That's fantastic. Peg, why are you a Unitarian Universalist? What was your journey into UUism, and what brought you to UUFCC?
Well, I have another spiritual path that only meets on the first Sunday of the month. So I needed to come, when I came down here in 97, I needed to find a church that I could go to on Sunday. And the only church I could come to was the one that my friends, Mike and Jean Karasteschi, who are able to be here now, they were here. They were members here. So I thought, I'll just go to the Unitarian church, because that's the only church that will accept me with my beliefs, my strange beliefs. So there are too many Eastern, too much Eastern philosophy in my beliefs. So that's why I came, and I've come ever since. And honestly, I'll tell you, I have never seen any more love in any other church I've ever been into than I have found in this Unitarian church. I have seen nothing but love. I cannot think of an instance when there was any offense against me. Now, maybe I just turned it off. Maybe I didn't recognize it. I think it passes over my head. I think that's what happens. And I'm glad. I'm glad it does. I'm very glad of that.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, Peg, tomorrow's a pretty special day in your life, isn't it?
I guess it is. Everyone seems to think it is.
So what is tomorrow?
Tomorrow is February the 1st, 1921, I was born. So I'm 100 years old.
100 years old. So we would love.
I never thought I'd live to be 100 years old.
I don't know that any of us set out to anticipate that as a goal, but we want to celebrate with you the only way we can. So I'd like to invite everyone who would like to unmute themselves right now, and let's sing happy birthday. It's not going to be synchronized. It's going to sound really wonky and weird, but I would just invite everybody to share this opportunity to express happy birthday, love, and gratitude to Peg. So we're going to sing. We're not going to sing it like a dirge. It's going to be a little bit upbeat, all right? So let's sing. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Peg. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you. Thank you. With all my heart. My dear friends.
Before they go away.
Thank you so much for being with us, Peg. It's wonderful to see you. Happy, happy, happy birthday, and maybe you'll have 100 more.
Who knows?
Whoa, 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 whoa. Audio. Dan, I did to mute everyone and I can't find you to unmute you, so you need to.
I've got it. Thanks.
Okay, great.
Thanks for letting me know, Samara. I appreciate it. Wow. What a special moment. Wisdom matters, and wisdom only comes with experience. And what Peg just shared with us, I'm glad that we are recording this. It will be available on our YouTube channel, and that will be something that I will go back and watch repeatedly, just that portion, regardless of what else happens in this service. That was worth the price of admission, which happens to be free, by the way. So it's worth a whole lot more than that. So thank you, Peg. Happy birthday. And hopefully you got the sense of how much you are loved in this community. And now we'd invite all of you to take an opportunity to share something with us for the Book of Life. While we meet in Zoom, our Book of Life takes place inside of our chat room, where you can share joys and concerns, happy thoughts, sad thoughts, things that are worrying you, that are making you stay awake at night and not allowing you to sleep. The celebrations that we have in addition to Peg's birthday, maybe you have a birthday or an anniversary or another significant date coming up. We invite you to take a moment now and share all of those items with us as a community in the Book of Life using the chat room feature in Zoom. We're going to play a song for just a couple of moments and give you a chance to do that. Go ahead and share your items now, if you would, please. Now we'd like to invite you to share with us a moment of silence. It's important in our life, in our world, in our culture today that we take a moment just to be still, to shut out all the distractions around you, all of the worries and concerns, everything that burdens on your mind and that weighs on your shoulders. At this moment, we ask you to take 1 minute to just be still, eyes open or eyes closed, whatever works for you. Shut out everything and just try to clear your mind and release everything that feels heavy in your life to the universe. Allow us to share that burden with you. After a minute, you'll hear me ding the bell, and then we will sing together Spirit of Life as we remain muted. I invite you to a minute of silence right now. My heart is already full this morning, being able to share as a community, being able to celebrate, being able to sing together. It is truly a great, great day. One great purpose of the world's faith traditions is to bring humanity closer to the divine by acts of creation and compassion. One purpose of this congregation is to encourage all who gather here to grow more and more generous in both spirit and in action. Even during this pandemic, when we can only gather virtually online, we take an offering that allows us to exercise that all-important generosity of spirit, an offering that supports this congregation and our many ministries. You can make donations by mail, by auto payment through your bank, or you can give electronically using the Venmo app on your smartphone. And we certainly continue to thank you for your generosity and for continuing to support the many ministries of UUFCC. I want to take us back a couple of weeks to what we all watched in horror on television on January 6th, as hundreds hundreds of Trump supporters stormed the Capitol building in an attempted insurrection to overthrow the election and to make sure that Trump had his voice heard, that they had their voices heard, and to try to force our elected representatives to overturn a fairly conducted election from November. The question that has been asked 1,000 times by me, by many of you, by those in the media, is what would have happened if that crowd, instead of being mostly white people, was mostly black people? What if it was mostly Muslim people? What if they were mostly Hispanic or immigrants or LGBTQ? Would they have been treated the same way? Would the police have simply opened the gates and allowed them to come in? Probably not. We all know the answer to that. A year ago, I preached about our first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. During that message, we talked about the idea of the inherent worth and dignity of all persons in the context of politics as we discussed privilege. I had a large sheet that we wrote all the different ways we could think of that we had privilege, that wound up being a really long list. We had class, race, gender, ethnicity, age, education, sexual preference, religion, ability, height, family, weight, citizenship, good hair, physical appearance, and so on and so on. It was the most popular sermon I have ever preached and the most controversial sermon I have ever preached. I know it was popular because of the comments after the message that I got for weeks afterwards, and because it's the highest number of viewers I've ever had on anything on YouTube that I've ever done. And I know it was controversial because of the comments that I got during and after the sermon and for days and weeks afterwards, and because I got the most number of views on that video than I've ever had of anything I've ever put on YouTube. The fact is that we simply don't like people telling us that we're privileged. It makes us feel defensive for a whole lot of reasons. Being aware of privilege isn't about feeling shame. It's not about asking you to apologize for the privilege you have. That's not the point at all. It's about awareness that we all have some advantage through no credit or effort on our part, while others do not share those same privileges through no fault or lack of effort on their part. The privileges we have are almost entirely an accident of birth. When I was a child, I mentioned early when Peg shared that she was from Indiana, that I also grew up in Indiana, not far from Kokomo, where she said she lived for a while. I lived near Fort Wayne, Indiana. I grew up in a small house trailer, a mobile home. Was 12 foot wide and 50 feet long with my mom, my dad, my sister, and myself. I shared a very small bedroom on bunk beds with my sister and lived in a trailer court for all my life growing up until I got married. I didn't realize my economic reality until I was growing up and found out that my parents couldn't afford to buy me a bicycle. And when they decided they were going to save to buy me a bicycle, to save $60, they had to save for an entire year to get a bicycle for Christmas. I didn't realize the economic disadvantage we had, even though we lived right across the street from a lot of my friends who lived in a subdivision that was one of the wealthiest in my area, where almost every house there had an in-ground pool in their backyard and a big fence and 2 or 3 story houses. There were a lot of ways when I was a kid that I could say I didn't have advantage. The family you were born into and the community you were born into either bestowed certain advantages on you at birth or burdened you with certain disadvantages through no fault or credit of your own. Even though I was born into relative poverty and I grew up in a mobile home, I saw people who looked like me on television. The history books we had in school had pictures of leaders who looked like me. The books that we read in literature classes were written by authors who looked like me. My teachers and professors all looked like me. In fact, in 24 years of schooling, elementary school, middle school, high school, 4 years of college, 3 years in seminary, 2 years in a second graduate degree, 3 years in a doctoral program, I have always had only white teachers, only white professors, only white educators. I've never had a black teacher. I've never had an Asian professor, no American educators. Everyone who led a classroom through all of my education, 24 years of it, was white as can be. And I never realized that until 2 weeks ago when my oldest daughter sent me a text message. She was working on a project and she said, "Dad, how many non-white teachers have you had throughout your life?" And I stopped and I was making a list. 0, none at all. I've moved several times in my adult life. I've never once had to wonder if my neighbors looked like me. I've never had to stand in front of a door wondering how I was going to manage to push that door open. I don't have to struggle to get up the steps to the chancel on Sunday mornings. I've never worried if I could find a baker who would make me a wedding cake. I've never had to hesitate to hold hands with the one I love in public. I've never had to repeat myself because of my accent. I've never left a party and worried about walking to my car by myself. I've never wondered if I'm living in the right body. I don't have to look at my bank account or my wallet before I go buy groceries. I don't have to think about how I practice my religion if somebody might be offended. I've never had to worry about taking a sick day out of fear I'd lose my job or not get paid. Many have hurdles that we simply cannot recognize because they've never been our hurdles. That's all that the effort to talk about privilege really is about. Yes, we tend to emphasize white privilege because for most of us, that's the most obvious privilege that we have. The color of our skin, we can all see. Others can see. As a white male, I've never had to be concerned when I saw a police siren behind me pulling me over, trying to accuse me of speeding, which of course I would never do. I've never been shopping in a store and had store security follow me around, making sure I wouldn't put something in my coat, slip something in my pocket, try to sneak out of the door with something without paying. I've never had that experience. I've never had to worry about people looking at me thinking they might be in danger or unsafe because of the color of my skin. And again, this is nothing to apologize for. It's also nothing to my credit. Did I earn my whiteness? No. Did I earn being 6'1"? No. Did I earn being a heterosexual? No. Did I earn any of the privilege that I have? Well, you could say, sure, you earned your college degrees. You worked hard for those. You became a professional. It's true. I did those things. But how much of that was because of my inherent ability or because I had privilege? Because I was white, because I had opportunities that I didn't even know I had, that others didn't have because they weren't white. Another privilege I had is that my parents dedicated themselves from the day I was born to make sure I went to college. My mom is very intelligent, very talented. Her one regret in life is that she never was able to go to college. She had an opportunity when she graduated high school to go to Indiana University. This was in the 50s, to study journalism. And my grandparents said, we simply can't afford that. So she didn't go to college. She worked for a couple years as a law clerk, And then she got a job as at General Electric, working on a factory line making submersible motors, where she worked the rest of her career until she retired. She decided I was going to go to college. It was something we talked about over and over and over again when I was a child. My privilege of going to college and graduating and valuing education is because she instilled that desire in me. That's a privilege I had, having parents who understood the value of a college education that a lot of my friends didn't have. I take no credit for that. There's a new word that I want to put in your vocabulary for a lot of you, something I'd like to encourage you to think about. The word is intersectionality. Intersectionality. Maybe you've heard that word before and haven't really thought much about it. Maybe you're not really understanding what it is or how to use it in a sentence among your friends or family, just in social conversation. Hey, let's talk about intersectionality. People will look at you like, you go right ahead and do that. I'm going to go get some more chips and dip. Intersectionality is the idea that we are all privileged in many, many ways, that others do not share that same privilege. I think it's unfortunate in some ways that we focus too much on white privilege, and we don't talk enough about the privilege of race, the privilege of where we were born, the privilege of our family, the privilege of size, the privilege of being healthy and able-bodied, the privilege of language, the privilege of a job, the privilege of transportation, on and on and on. If we go back to the list that I shared just a few minutes ago, if you have a pencil or you just want to use your fingers, how many of you can share these statements with me? I have moved several times and never once had to wonder if my neighbors looked like me. If that's true of you, go ahead and put a finger up. I've never had to stand in front of a door wondering how I was going to manage to open that door. If that's true of you, put another finger up. I don't have to struggle to get upstairs. I've never worried if I could find a baker to make a wedding cake. Another finger. I've never hesitated to hold hands with the one I love in public. That's another finger. I've never had to repeat myself because of my accent. I've never left a party and worried about walking in the dark to my car by myself. I've never wondered if I'm living in the right body. I don't have to look at my bank account or wallet before I go buy groceries. I don't have to think about how I practice my religion. I've never had to worry about taking a sick day out of fear I'd lose my job or not get paid. I could go on and list a whole lot more, but hopefully the point is made. Look at how many fingers you've put up. Those are all the ways that you have privilege and others don't. And it's true, there are probably some ways that you don't have privilege that others do. That's called intersectionality. And the reason that it matters is that it gives us more compassion for people. It helps us to understand that we get to where we are in life a lot of times because we don't have the hurdles and the barriers that others do from the moment that they're born. I've never had to deal with the barrier of my race or my ethnicity. That's intersectionality. The many ways in which we can have privilege, some of the ways in which you don't. Again, this is not about shaming you or making you feel guilty. It's about raising awareness of the hurdles that others face. If we truly believe that all people have inherent worth and dignity, no matter who they are, then we are obligated to use the incredible power of our intersectional privilege to break down barriers, to right wrongs, to correct injustices, to help normalize whatever our society views as weird and scary. It is our obligation as UUs to fight for, as our second principle states, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. May we all use our privilege to help all of humanity. And may that begin with me. Amen and blessed be. Laura has our closing words.
The possibilities of where you can leverage your privilege to make real measurable change toward a better world are endless. Every day you are given opportunities to make the world better by making yourself a little uncomfortable and asking, who doesn't have this same freedom or opportunity that I'm enjoying now? These daily interactions are how systems of oppression are maintained, but with awareness, they can be how we tear those systems down. So please check your privilege. Check it often.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Laura. I've got a few things I'd like to share as part of Life of the Community at this time. And I want to start with John Lee. We can go ahead and just find John and spotlight him if we can. There's John. John is chair of our nominating committee, and the nominating committee for about 10 months of the year just gets to say, I'm on the nominating committee. And then for about 2 months, they freak out and do tons of work and meet for 1,000 hours and do some of the most important work that any committee does as part of our congregation. So John is here to tell us a little bit about what's happening with the nominating and tell us maybe some needs that we still have.
Okay, first, let me say, and I'll talk about it in just 1 minute, but first I have to say, I've been in a really bad mood the last week and pretty much felt like Chicken Little, like the sky was falling. And believe it or not, it took a 100-year-old woman to snap me out of it this morning. Thank you, Peg. You have no idea what you did for my inner feelings this morning. Anyway, okay, we have to, the nominating committee has to present a slate of candidates for open positions before the board meeting in February, so they can be presented as a ballot in March. So the new positions can be filled by the beginning of our fiscal year on April 1st. And right now we have just a couple openings that are still available that there are no candidates for. And one is a position on the nominating committee. We actually have 2 positions open, but Carol Burkett was an alternate this year and has agreed to run as one of the positions. So we have 1 position open there. And then we also have 2 positions for the General Assembly, which will be held virtually again this year. So if anybody's interested, please contact the members of the committee, which are Linda Quinn, Lynn Ritchie, Dennis Shaw, Helen Sokolsky, and myself. And you can contact us anyway, phone number, phone or email or whatever. Just let one of us know. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, John, for your time, for your service. The nominating committee can often be a very difficult, stress-filled, thankless task. And since there's 1 spot left on the nominating committee, I know that doesn't sound like much of a sales pitch, but the biggest advantage of being on the nominating committee is that you can make sure you're not nominated for another position. So think about that before you turn down that opportunity. Next Sunday starts, well, tomorrow starts February, of course, and next Sunday starts our annual Social Justice Speaker Series at noon. So keep an eye out for information about that. You can anticipate some really great speakers over the next few months. It'll be the first Sunday of each month at noon here on Zoom. Please look for information about that. Also a reminder that our online auction continues to go on. There are new items added. I just saw another one pop up this morning. And then in 2 weeks, on Saturday night, we have our live auction on Zoom that will wrap up the auction season with lots of really cool and fun activities, some really interesting auction items for which you will want to bid probably tens of thousands of dollars. And it will be a massive fundraiser and we'll celebrate lots of fun things. Thank you for participating in that, for giving some really creative auction items. By the way, if anybody could donate like 3 or 4 hours of landscaping time to help me work on things in the yard, I will absolutely snatch that up, and not at bargain basement prices, but I will pay top dollar for you to help me with some of that stuff. So there's lots of creative things for our auction, and we're excited about that. So thank you for your participation and your continued support. And now it's time to extinguish our chalice, but not the light of hope, the fire of community, or the warmth of commitment. May those ideals shine in our lives and warm our hearts until we are together again, however long that takes. And now please sing with us our community benediction, Go Now in Peace.
Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the Spirit of us surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the Spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere.
And now, as we leave this space and we bring our worship service to a close, I encourage you, as I do each week, to be a blessing to everyone you meet, no matter where that may be. Be a blessing to those sharing a home with you because they're sharing a home with you, and be a blessing to yourself because we need it during this time. So go be a blessing to everyone. Thank you for being here. And if you'd like to stick around for social hour, we'll assign you to chat rooms here in just a moment. So hang out, and that will happen. Thank you all so much. It's so great to see you. Have a wonderful end to your January today.